how did you get to this particular place?
Well, that has been a journey, all right, hasn't it? You know, I come from very humble background back in Mumbai, India. You know, my parents, mom was just a housewife and dad was a clerk, and that's what he was his entire life. And, you know, he had 3 children. I happened to be the oldest. And my daddy could not educate himself because when he was 5, his dad passed on.
When he was 5?
When he was 5 years
Okay.
old. So he became ipso facto, couldn't educate himself, had 2 sisters that he became responsible for, and a mother, very young mother, obviously. And then, you know, of course, we had the partition between India and Pakistan in 1947 when British left, and, you know, millions were slaughtered in that religious fight between Hindus and Muslims, but they did survive and make it to India. But, you know, he knew one thing, that education would be the key that'll unlock the poverty in our family. So he had such a strong belief in it, and by the way, he self-educated himself so that he became excellent in English and math, all on his own, and he barely finished high school, and then, you know, obviously did a job, but he was hell-bent on making a professional medical doctor out of him. He knew that that's one way I won't have to live a life of poverty. Because it was very common in my family of 5 at that time that after the 25th of the month, there was not much to go around with, you know. So I mean, last few days each month we were all really hard up, and you know that's not what he wanted for his children, and he used all his resources, very meager as they were, towards getting me educated, so that if I become a medical doctor, then the whole family can be lifted out of poverty. And with his devotion and farsightedness and paying for the medical school, it certainly happened, but unfortunately, right about the time I became a medical doctor, he passed on. So, and my mother had been gone, you know, 4.5 years prior to him. So at 24, I became a parent, mother and father, to my younger brother and my younger sister.
Wow.
So, and I had no experience at parenting. I thought like I was a kid myself because daddy made all the decisions for me right up to that age. And, you know, I had very little freedom to think for me and do for me and on and on. So now here I am in his place and mommy's place, making decisions for myself and for my younger brother and sister, who were both about 10 years younger than me.
Wow. So they were teenagers at the moment.
Yeah.
They're early
my
teenagers.
sister was 14.
Wow.
And my brother was 15.
Wow.
So,
and you were
yes,
24.
And I was 24, and all of a sudden I'm facing
the responsibility.
The enormity of the responsibility.
Now stop. With that, it is interesting because, you know, you said pretty much daddy made all the decisions for you growing up.
Absolutely.
And was that decision for you to become a physician, was that, because I think when you and I talked, you mentioned that was not the initial path that he set for you, correct? Talk a little bit about that, man.
So very true, because he was brilliant in math and he inculcated those in me from the very childhood. I was supposed to be an engineer. And I'm 16 years old and I'm out of town with my mother, and I get a letter, a handwritten letter. Harish, I have just read a study where 40,000 engineers are unemployed in India. This is 1967. So therefore, you're no longer going to be an engineer, and I want you to be a doctor.
Wow.
There was no discussion. There was absolutely no give or take. He made that call. And guess what? When I come back to Mumbai, be with him, I couldn't ask him anything because he already stated that 40,000 engineers are unemployed. You don't want to be one of them. You don't want to join their ranks. As a doctor, you will always be able to support yourself and your family.
And that was also with the notion of you becoming a doctor in India.
Correct.
That's interesting. And I think we'll kind of touch on that a little bit later.
Yep.
But Daddy, or you call him Papa? What do you call him?
No, I call him Daddy.
Daddy. So
Yes.
Daddy had the notion of you becoming a doctor
Yes.
in India.
Yes.
That's interesting.
And the funny thing is, yes, I was supposed to, be in India, finish my medical school and practice and all that stuff. But he also used to say all his life, man proposes, God disposes. And as soon as I become the doctor, he passes on. So here I am, not knowing what to do with my life. Don't forget, I may be 24 chronologically, but as far as making decisions for my own self, I'm more like not even 18. I haven't made any decisions of substance in my life. And now I've got all the decisions for all three of us
On your shoulders.
on my shoulders.
And to me, the thing or the term that reigns true, or the term that speaks to me there, is responsibility.
Yes.
And it's interesting, you and I had a conversation a while ago, and you mentioned the concept of being exceedingly responsible. Do you think your circumstances, by in essence becoming a father, early to your younger siblings, one, but then the notion that your father, in essence, gave you a playbook to follow, and it was your job to follow that playbook, led to this notion of being exceedingly responsible?
Yeah, it was a task. It was literally a dictum. It didn't matter if he had physically left me. He really, truly has never left me, because I have lived according to his program, according to his dictum, according to his verdict. This is a life you're going to live, Paresh. So, here I am, all these 4 decades later, still responsible for my sister, who lives in California. Still responsible, of course, my younger brother has passed on, but his wife and daughter live in Mumbai. I still support them to this very day. Because how can I not? All the family resources were spent in making a doctor out of me. So even though they did not educate themselves, but they couldn't have, even if they wanted to. There was not enough money to pay for the education of 3 siblings.
Wow.
So he had made that call early on
That it was you.
that it was going to be me. So how can I not feel responsible towards them?
Exceedingly responsible, and you took it upon yourself to buy into that notion of being exceedingly responsible based on all that was invested in you.
Correct.
What part of that do you attribute to the cultural roots of growing up in Mumbai? And I mean, how much of that do you believe is cultural versus how much of that was just instilled from Daddy?
Probably a combination. In our culture, since we don't have churches where you go and donate 10% or whatever percent of your income every month or every year to where the church can go out and help the people who are not well off or bad off. So in our faith, it is more like doing it for the family. So, I mean, you grow up from the childhood seeing people doing it for their brothers, their sisters, their parents, their aunts and uncles, and many times their cousins and other relatives, because it's family. So the family structure is very tight. You grow up seeing that, so it really is automatic. Now, would I be feeling responsible 40 years after my marriage and passage of Daddy? Probably not. But because of his sacrifice
Wow.
to get me to become a medical doctor, even at the cost of the other siblings, leaves me with no choice but to continue to support them.
Wow.
Now, obviously, they don't live a life of luxury. That's not what my calling is. That's not what I'm supposed to do. But if they have difficulty feeding themselves or don't have a roof over their head and things of that nature, or if they want to educate themselves, it is my responsibility to pay for their education. Doesn't matter what that costs. For example, my brother's only daughter not only paid for her education, but for things that she wanted to do to enhance her skills to get a better job and things of that nature. And she's 21 now, but I still am constantly telling her to get further education, and I still will pay for it.
It's powerful.
Because don't forget, it is a secret sauce.
It is.
The education.
And then, you also mentioned the notion of the best of both worlds.
Yes.
How the best of the East and the West, and kind of how you mesh that together. And I guess, but let's take a step back, because, you mentioned the best of both worlds, but that initial infusion into the West wasn't necessarily the best for you, correct?
Not at that time.
Not at that time.
Yeah, I remember for first 2 to 3 years, I wanted to go back.
And you were just married too, right?
Yes,
So
married and came over.
we can't omit that. We have to kind of even walk that back a little bit.
Right.
So you came from India.
Yes.
And culturally, there are arranged marriages, correct?
Yes.
And so you have to talk a little bit about that, because you became married under that realm prior to coming to the United States.
Correct.
And so then you came to the United States as a newly married guy.
Yes.
Who married a young lady that you really didn't know before.
Correct.
You all embarked on the journey of creating a life on a new continent with new languages, a totally new culture.
Learning each other.
And learning each other. Talk a little bit about that, man.
Well, I mean, arranged marriages not as common today in India as they used to be when I got married. And it's funny, parents arrange those marriages. The two people getting married have very little say-so.
Wow.
Now, think about this. Both my parents are gone.
Wow.
So now what happens? Well, I had to request an uncle of mine and an aunt of mine, one from my mother's side, one from my father's side, to please come to Mumbai to help me select the right woman for the remainder of my life.
Wow.
So it was not even
Wow.
my parents.
Wow.
My aunt, who was my daddy's sister, and my uncle, who was my mother's brother, they didn't live in Mumbai, they traveled all the way to Mumbai to come and tell me who would be the right fit for me, because there was more than one woman that was interested in marrying me. But they had to make the decision.
Wow.
So that call was not made by me.
That was made by them.
Was made by them. And again, this goes back to the family that
Yes.
I keep talking about.
Yes.
So yes, when we married each other, we knew nothing about each other, and 40 years later, hey, we're still there.
Now I have a question. So with that, when it comes to criteria, is it, does your uncle say like, hey man, she's a looker, or does your aunt say like, you two would have beautiful babies? I mean, what are the criteria? Because when I think about like, the culture in the United States or Western culture, it's, the love at first sight, or I become infatuated with someone, we fall in love, and then we decide to, take our, relationship to the next step and solidify it and become married and build a life together. It's different, very different from radically different. So when it comes to like criteria, just talk a little bit about this, because we want to share, with those that are checking this thing out, like there are different ways that things happen. But just because they're different, it doesn't mean that they're wrong. So talk a little bit about like what does your family deem to be things that are compatible with you? And I mean, what is it a physical thing? Is it a financial thing? What is it?
Well, it's a combination.
Okay.
It's a compilation of I think the most important is education.
Okay.
Both the parties need not same education, but somewhat similar. For example, Hannah was BS chemistry.
Okay.
I'm a medical doctor. That's considered good enough. Okay. Another one is a family background. Okay. I mean, there was no history of divorce on either side of our family going back as far as we could. That's considered good.
Wow.
And then some importance is given to the looks, but that's not the most important factor at all. Okay. Financially, you have to look at both the parties come from relative financial strength. You don't want someone very poor marrying a multimillionaire. So
that's right.
It's not
compatible.
Jail. The good thing about arranged marriages is that Hannah and I began to know each other, good and bad, moles and warts, all at the same time.
Wow.
As compared to dating, when everybody is putting their best foot forward.
Wow.
And you only see the strengths of the person until 6 months later when you marry, and then you see all of the other person.
You start to realize that Deans give her gas too.
Wait a minute. This is not what you showed me. And the other party said, well, but that's not how you acted either. So it gets complicated. Whereas here, the good and the bad, hand in hand.
Wow.
Day in, week in, month in, year in, this person has these strengths, this person has these weaknesses, and you just accept them as part of the human.
It's interesting because with when you think about marriage, especially like under like the different beliefs, like the Christian doctrine or something, sometimes you'll hear the concept of being equally yoked, right? Yes. And so when they talk about equally yoked, usually they're just talking about spiritually being under the same belief structure, right? Because if you're not equally yoked there, it kind of makes life difficult because you're coming from different belief structures and all. And it's like from a cultural perspective, you all took it a step further. It's like, yes, equally yoked from a spiritual perspective, but then you looked at everything else from family history to financial status to education to and it's interesting. And I'm not necessarily proposing that we need to adopt arranged marriages, but what we can learn from you all's situation or circumstance or opportunity, so to speak, is that you're not just connected to a person, you're connected to that family.
Correct. You marry the family.
You marry, and see, I know when I was dating my wife, that was one of the things I had talked to either an uncle or aunt. My parents might have actually mentioned it to me. But the whole notion of as you start to pursue marriage, you're not just marrying a person, you're marrying a family.
Absolutely.
right?
Yeah,
And it's incumbent upon us to do that background research and that understanding of what it is you're stepping into, because that person, like you mentioned, might be all good on the surface, but what are they connected to?
Well, it's funny you say that because when I was confused between two options I had, I went and saw my friend's dad, who was considered a wise man in the community. And he listened to me for about 10 minutes. He didn't see any of the pictures. He didn't need to. He found out that Hannah had 4 brothers in America, which is where I wanted to migrate. He said, it's a no-brainer. It's closed.
Wow.
You're going to inherit 4 brothers when you reach America.
Wow.
What is there to think?
Inherit 4 brothers.
What is that? And they said, that's it. It's closed. And he was right. Come to find out,
She had 4 brothers in
she
America.
had 4 brothers. So when we migrated here, guess how did we survive?
The 4 brothers. And that goes back to the responsibility
Yes.
that is infused culturally. So the moment that you become their brother-in-law,
Correct.
then it is their responsibility, if they are in a better circumstance,
Yes.
to take
They had
care.
been settled here. They come here sooner. They were here for a number of years. They supported us till we got our footing.
Wow. Wow.
Back to that cultural responsibility.
Responsibility is even interesting because with the arranged marriage, because culturally that is a tradition.
Yes.
But to me, because everything the groundwork has been laid for you, everything is kind of set up, the notion of your relationship didn't start with infatuation, love, and lust. It started
You met a
with,
person, how do you get infatuated?
that's right, but it started with responsibility.
Yes.
And so to me, that whole concept of starting with responsibility, but then learning how to love.
Well, you can call it learning how to love. So, some people have asked me, so you mean you were not in love with the person you married? I said, I couldn't be.
You didn't know them.
I hadn't met her.
That's
so
right.
And vice versa. But guess what? 40 years later, I love her more than I did when I married her.
Wow.
How many people could claim that?
That's true. Wow. But it's interesting. Again, I see all these themes, but one of these themes is responsibility, right?
Absolutely.
And it's just like, if you are, and to me, responsibility stems from commitment. And so you've been committed to success because of all that was invested in you as a young man. You've been committed to it based on your culture, based on what the groundwork that daddy laid for you.
Upbringing.
But then when it comes to the responsibility of taking care of family and all, you're committed to that. The same thing with the marriage, even though the groundwork was laid for you. Yeah. Someone else made the selection and the suggestion and everything. It's the notion that you are committed to the process. And by being committed, you have the very strong likelihood of actually succeeding in that commitment, because you choose to be committed on the front end. It's a choice.
It's a choice. And then in our faith, another thing that's very important is the blessings of the elders. So, those aunts and uncles of mine, they were certainly a lot older than I was. They were my mother and father's siblings. How can I just shrug their input off and go and make a decision of my own? I need their blessings. And it's the blessings that have got me where I've gotten in my life. My whole progress, path, journey, I think has been blessed because of many, many right decisions that were made under the guidance, firstly of my parents, as long as they were alive, and then their siblings when they passed. So, and it's not uncommon in Eastern cultures for people to have very high regards for elders.
That's right.
Older is a term used here.
Wow.
We call them elder.
Elders here.
Elder is there.
And
There's a huge difference.
That is a humongous difference.
Connotation between an older. Older is someone like that's no longer useful. I mean, this is old.
Wow.
How about an elder?
It's held in high esteem.
Absolutely. We seek them.
Wow.
Didn't I seek my friend's father to make the final decision for me? He was an elder.
The best of both worlds.
Absolutely.
Because you mentioned the best of both worlds. Like, that's something, elder, and I've never thought about it that way. Elder versus older. Older, no longer useful.
Correct.
Elders held in high esteem.
We sought them out. Not many people go and seek elders out here. But back home,
They seek
we
elders.
seek elders. We need their blessing. We need the guidance.
Wow.
We need their wisdom. They have experiences, decades of experience that the 25-year-old is not going to have. He hasn't been around that long, right? And more so if you're raised under the tutelage of your parents who have essentially provided you with everything as they deemed fit. So once my dad is gone and my mom is already passed, wait a minute. I need guidance. I need suggestions. I need the blessing.
You need the elders.
I need the elders.
And to them, they deem you as a responsibility of theirs.
Correct.
Powerful.
Isn't it?
Powerful.
So it plays both ways.
It does.
I mean, they could easily, oh, I'm busy. And they were. You know, they had their children. They had their spouses. They hadn't died. So, you know, I mean, they had their thing. So guess what? They came over. Because how am I going to make my life's biggest decision without any elders?
Without any elders.
Yeah. I mean, I can't. I mean, it won't be the way of God.
That's powerful. And you know, when you say that, when you mention the respect for the elders, not the elders, that's something I'm going to really start adding into my lexicon. Not talking about someone being older,
Correct.
but someone is my elder.
Correct.
Because it holds them in high esteem, and it gives them respect for just being who they are.
Absolutely.
Right? Because there's so much, you know, there's wisdom in the gray hair, right? And I actually have a couple myself, but I'm not there yet. But I guess, but to somebody, maybe I am an elder, right? but it's interesting to think about it from that perspective, because
Stu is probably grinning there.
I know, right? Yeah, he's looking at me like, yeah, Mike, you are my elder. Stu Boyd Films, right? But yeah, man, so when we think about the concept of respecting your elders and honoring your elders and not just viewing them as older, how that is something from the East that you've melded into your life, taking the best from both worlds.
Yes.
But you came to this new world with a new wife, you mentioned 4 brothers and their families, you know, already living here. Your wife's brother's already here.
Right.
Talk a little bit about that transition. Like, what were some of the challenges that you faced as you jumped into the Western world, living in the East?
Lots of challenges, cultural challenges, food challenges.
Food challenge. See, I'm a foodie. Oh, you have to talk about that. Give us an example of something that was new to you when you came here.
I'm going from rice and curry to these burgers and hot dogs and fries and pizza. And
Like ketchup. What is that?
What in the world are we talking about here? Give me my rice and curry. So, yeah, I mean, all kinds of challenges, you know, food and culture, religion, faiths different. But, you know, the family, Hannah's family was here. And, you know, it's like I became a part of that family, okay? Or they became a part of my family.
That's right.
It's the same thing, and like family. We argued, we dickered, you know, we fought, we disagreed, but yet they knew that they had to take care of Hannah and I till we get on our feet. What are they going to do? Throw us out? That doesn't happen. So they will tell us what's the best option, we have in this country when you are here and here and here, but yet, they will support us till we became independent. So for first couple of years, as I said, I kept wanting to go back because I knew I can go back and have my own practice as a doctor and make decent money. But, Hannah was very strong. She wanted to be here. She knew that hard times will pass and we will become independent. And guess what? She was right again.
Wow.